So Bear 312 has a great question here, which is on a thin slicey knife like this is the TRM Atom, especially in this hollow ground version, do I prefer a steel like 20CV that prioritizes edge retention a bit more, or a steel like Magnacut that is a little bit tougher, maybe a little bit less edge retentive, but a little bit tougher? I think about this a little bit the same way that folks talk about chef knives, and if you're into folding knives and you're not into chef knives, you should really start looking into chef knives. The way chef knife people, culinary knife people talk about their blades, there's a lot to learn in understanding why folding knife designs work. When you get a knife that is very thin behind the edge like this, very slicey, the biggest issue you want to avoid is chipping. Because if you chip this, whether you're, passing it through some drywall and you hit a staple, or you just slam it a bit too hard, you're in the garden and you hit a rough patch and it just, the edge chips, which is a risk when your edge is thin and your blade is brittle. That chip is a catastrophic failure. That chip is going to take some out of your blade. You're going to have to sharpen it quite a bit and shorten your blade's life to get it back to the performance you want again. And because this edge is so thin, even if that very apex at the edge isn't perfectly sharp, it's still going to feel pretty sharp. It's still going to cut pretty well just because the geometry is so good. So the fact is, choosing a steel that's more edge retentive like 20CV, to me is kind of overkill. You're sacrificing that toughness. You're making the blade more likely to chip, more likely to fail catastrophically, and you're already going to have pretty good edge retention because of the geometry. Now, if your goal is to have something that cuts like a scalpel and cuts forever, then go ahead, go all the way, get a super slicey knife, get it in high HRC 20CV or Rex 121 or Maxmet, whatever, go for it. But you're going to have a blade that's very fragile for a lot of EDC use. Conversely, if you get a steel like Magnacut or a tool steel, something that's a little bit tougher, you're going to have a blade that can still slice very well and will slice very well for a pretty long time, but you don't have to worry about babying it as much because it is going to be tougher. You've also got the edge case. This thing gets thin toward the tip. You can do a little bit of light prying even with a thin knife if it's in a tougher steel. So in a thin, slicey EDC knife like this, for general EDC use, I am almost always going to prefer a tougher steel over a more edge-retentive steel, given the choice between the two, assuming that they're both high-quality, well heat-treated steels, just because the toughness of that steel is going to accentuate where this knife is weak, and I don't really need that edge retention to be extreme to get what I need out of a really well-ground knife. Great question. Hope that helps.